Welcome to this live stream from First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Our mission is to love radically, grow ethically and spiritually, and serve justly. We invite you to visit our website at www.ucdsm.org. It's a great way to explore all that our church has to offer, from adult programs, to religious education, to social justice work, and more. Today's service will look a little different. We're temporarily holding services in Griffin Hall while we renovate our auditorium. It's a small inconvenience and a welcome sign of our thriving and growing church community. Today's service is about to begin. So now we'll take you inside Griffin Hall.
No, you can start now. Hear these words by Rabindranath Tagore. Child, how happy you are sitting in that dust, playing with a broken twig all the morning. I smile at your play with that little bit of a broken twig. I am busy with my accounts, adding up figures by the hour. Perhaps you glance at me and think, what a stupid game to spoil your morning with. Child, I have forgotten the art of being absorbed in sticks and mud pies. I seek out costly playthings and gather lumps of gold and silver. With whatever you find, you create your glad games. I spend both my time and my strength over things I never can obtain. In my frail canoe, I struggle to cross the sea of desire and forget that I, too, am playing a game.
Please join with me in the chalice lighting words in your order of service. We light this chalice in celebration of the holy gift of play, the laughter that opens our hearts, the curiosity that awakens our minds, and the joy that reminds us we belong to one another. May this flame inspire us to create, imagine, and delight. For in play, we discover connection, wonder, and the sacred. And now, let us pass the peace. Some folks love to move about and greet one another, and some folks prefer a little personal space. Let us follow the platinum rule and do unto others what they wish.
Okay, this morning we are going to be singing number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do. We will be singing only the first verse. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
Good morning. I'm Diane Ford, she, her, your celebrant this morning. Welcome all genders, ethnicities, bodies, and stories. Whatever you are carrying with you, whatever you long to set down or pick up today, may you find here the love, support, and encouragement you seek. Our church lies on the ancestral grounds of the Iowa and Meskwaki people. May we strive to be in right relationship with this land and all who dwell here, both now and in the future. A special welcome to those who are new or newish in this community. We have a wonderful coffee hour after the service that we hope you all will join with us in for good food and good fellowship. And a reminder for us all, fall is coming, and you know what that means. I don't mean turning back the clocks again, but before that we'll be tearing up the lower parking lot and need to plan to park somewhere else on Sunday mornings. Most of us will park across the street on Bell Avenue, off of Bell Avenue, and we'll save the upper lot and the street parking on this side of the church for folks with mobility issues. So watch the intercom for updates. And just a note, in case you haven't noticed, this is not Bruce Martin at the piano. Susie Pritchett, thank you so much for doing this. Okay.
And good morning, I'm Faith Yana Leonard. My pronouns are any and all, and I am your congregational life coordinator. But today, I'm pleased to give you the sermon today about one of my favorite topics, the theology of play. And talking about play, our adult programming team is going to be in the gathering area after service helping with sign up for small groups, so please go and visit them. We'll explore how staying curious and a little silly can be a part of sacred practice and good for the soul and a lot of fun. And as Unitarian Universalists, we gather together, not bound by creed, but by the promises we make to one another, which we call covenants. Will you join me in reading together our congregation's mission statement in your order of service? We covenant together to advance our mission, to love radically, grow ethically and spiritually, and serve justly.
There. It's so surprising. 1007 in your hymn book, there's a river flowing in my soul, and we will be singing the first verse. Am I right? There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul.
This is Prayer for Play by Vanita Hampton Wright. God, who made each and every living being, I know there's a fun and whimsical aspect to you because there is no complete logical explanation for the way kittens play and children say the most accurate, embarrassing things sometimes. I know that you designed us to run until we're giddy and breathless, to converse in ways that in mere moments can dissolve an entire group of people into uncontrollable laughter. You built within our minds a fascination for solving riddles and working puzzles. You gave us the ability to skip or to roll down a hill, neither of which would have helped the species survived in the wild. Surely you had fun in mind and nothing else. Open my eyes and hear, Lord, to see the whimsy, to take part in the play, to enjoy my life, and to laugh often.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Morrow, and I use he, him pronouns, and I'm Pastoral Care Associate for your congregation. We devote this time to honoring all that's held within this community and to letting you know we're holding it with you. You can reach Pastoral Care by emailing pastoralcareteam@ucdsm.org, by visiting the Caring Community page on our website, dropping a card in the Cares and Concerns box, calling or texting our phone number posted at the desk outside the auditorium, or speaking with me or any member of our team. Here's what's been shared with us this week. This weekend, Kathy Beck Cross is celebrating her retirement with family and friends. After 44 years as a social worker and then teaching at Grandview, she is ending her career as the director of the Master of Social Work program, which she set up for the university as a full professor. She and spouse, Eldon, are delighted to have their two sons, Alec from Colorado and Ian's spouse, Jesse from Sweden, home to join in the celebration. Congratulations, Kathy, on a successful career and well-deserved retirement. And this morning, John Knapp McAllister submitted two joys that he has. First, he was awarded as one of the 5 Teachers of the Year by the Des Moines Rotary Club for his work teaching at Options Academy, Des Moines Public Schools alternative high school program. Also, John missed the last 2 weeks of church to help his daughter, Ellery, and her new spouse move to Ithaca, New York. Ellery is starting a PhD in accounting at Cornell University. Congrats on all of that, John. A reminder that the Grief Support Circle meets the second Sunday of each month from 3 to 4 p.m. in the minister's office. And this month's circle meets this afternoon. All are welcome for as many or as few times as you need. For all who are grieving, may love gently surround and hold you. We know there are people in your hearts today. Let's name those who could use some extra love and support by speaking the names aloud or holding them silently. And as we say these names, may the love of our community hold us all. Kyle. We now light 3 candles. 1 candle for the sorrows, and 1 candle for all that's held silently among us. For all of these, we now observe a minute of silence.
We'll be singing hymn number 1053, just the first verse.
To my soul.
And now we come to the offering, and as many of you know, we take a card from the back of the room, the Singing UU gratitude cards, and actually talk about how grateful we are to people in the congregation who give of themselves and help us all. So this is a UU recognition for Faith, Chelsea, Eric, Sally, Andrew, Dominic, and the Congregational Life team for sponsoring a parents' night out. We appreciate the opportunity to share dinner and adult conversation together. So that's one gratitude. And we now take up our morning offering as a practice of our generosity, for in giving we receive.
Well, you've given of your money. You're here, you're given some of your seat. And so now we're going to play. They say just music, but it's special music because you're going to play along with us with your voices. We're taking as somebody said, it's a sampling of 2 songs. You know them well. If I Had a Hammer and Blowing in the Wind. And I've got some people who are going to be playmates with us today. Aaron and Sarah are going to help kind of direct and make sure you've got this insert. If your eyes are better than mine, you can read it. And John and Ann.
They're right there.
Oh, they're just going to sit. Well, they're going to play in a different way. Okay. They're going to be belting out If I Had a Hammer. So we're going to start with If I Had a Hammer, and I guess I better get my guitar on.
Susan, when you were younger, did you have long, straight hair?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, does it, like, thinking back there, does it make you feel old?
Does it make me feel old?
Yeah, that.
No.
I mean, like, I remember having long, straight hair. It was all the rage. It was
Okay.
all the rage, dude. Sitting there playing, like these protest songs and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
With your long hair, long
Yeah.
straight hair, wishing that you were a hippie, flower child.
I was a hippie.
Yeah, I'm too young to have been a hippie, which is
I'm
very
still a
sad, but
hippie.
God.
Well, let's stop playing around and let's play.
All right.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning. I'd hammer out the love between brothers and my sisters all over this land. Ooh.
How many roads must a man walk down before you can call him a man? Yes, and how many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they are forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
If I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning, ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out a warning, I'd ring out the love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. Ooh.
How many years can a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? Yes, and how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? Yes, and how many times can a man turn his head pretending he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
If I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out a warning, I'd sing out the love between brothers and my sisters all over this land. Ooh.
How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? Yes, and how many ears must one man have before they can hear people cry? Yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Now I've got a hammer, and we got a bell, and we got a song to sing all over this land. It's a hammer of justice, it's a bell of freedom, it's a song of love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. Ooh,
Ooh, thank you for playing along.
Well, thanks. That was wonderful. Gosh. Yep. It always helps to have a spouse that handles things for you so well. I don't know what I'd do without you. Well, good morning. My name's Chris Renner, he, him, his, and I want to talk to you about play. You see, as a former farm kid with a lot of experience playing, and as an early childhood educator for over 40 years, I see a lot of play, and I learned a lot about play. Well, we all know that play is usually like a fun, voluntary activity for enjoyment or recreation, and it often has It involves free choice where you choose to do it yourself, and it's done more intrinsically than for an external reward. And of course, it involves imagination many times and make-believe, and even sometimes motivated by having a challenge. But play can be done alone or in the company of others, and a group will often encourage you to do things that you wouldn't mind even think of doing or even trying by yourself. Well, growing up with 3 older siblings on the farm there, this was often the case. And the summer I was 5, provides a good example of group play that explores a challenging question, having to do with our backyard bench swing, the kind that you usually see on a porch, but we had no porch in our farmhouse, so it was hung by a pole out in the backyard from an elm tree on one side and 2 posts down on the other. Well, if my older teenage boy cousins were visiting from Green Bay, and we were all kind of gathered around the backyard there near that swing, and they began to wonder if you couldn't possibly just push that swing so it went all the way around, even that big, heavy wooden bench swing, right? And we would only know if we tried it, right? So, of course, and it had to have somebody in it to make it around. And me being just 5 years old and the smallest by far, and somebody who was always ready to do anything, I was the perfect person. And of course, it sounded like great fun to me as well. Well, the first complication occurred when they began to swing it, and being 5 years old, sitting in a bench swing, I was bound to fall out before they got very high at all. So they solved that by going in the barn, looking around, found some baling twine that they could tie around my waist, through the slats in the back of the wooden bench swing there. And then they started pushing me again, I could work out pretty good. But then I kept banging my head against the back because I couldn't hold myself very well, being 5 and pretty little. So they got another piece of twine and put it around my neck through the slats in the back. And then that worked pretty good. I didn't go anywhere. And it was, I was absolutely safe and secure with this arrangement, right? And so they began pushing with great zeal. And with each push, man, that swing getting higher and higher. I was really enjoying that feeling of weightlessness you'd get. I'd never actually ever had that before. And finally, they gave it a mighty push, and it swung all the way up to the top. But then it was supposed to keep swinging all the way around in full orbit. But instead, it just sort of hung there at the top, lost its momentum, and then it fell straight down. And it missed the post, the pole across the top. But of course, when it hit the end of the chain, it just spun wildly the other direction. Fortunately, the twine around my neck broke. Unfortunately, the one around my waist didn't. And so it just slammed me face first right into the ground. And so right away, I was just howling and crying. They were saying, quiet, Mom will hear you. They tried to shut me up, right? And but then when they untied that last piece of twine and got me up on my feet, they realized both my front teeth were missing. So, they began looking in the dirt for them, figuring they could stick them back in, right? And but they weren't there because I'd swallowed them, knocked them right down my throat. So there was no recourse but to tell Mom. I don't recall if there was any kind of a consequence for this whole thing, except that to this day I have 2 front teeth that bend in the funny way because there wasn't room when they grew in for them, because the other ones were prematurely lost. But we did find the answer to the question, can you push a swing all the way around? And we learned that in this case anyway, centrifugal force was no match for gravity. Another example of play was when I was about 11 or 12. So I'm older and obviously know a lot better on how to do things. I don't do stupid things. As I mentioned earlier, play can take the form of pretending and imagination. And my dad had an Angus cow herd of about 300 cows, and we had some large pastures that we kept them in. And often one of the jobs we had was to ride our horses out and check on the cattle, especially during calving season, to make sure everything was okay. And so in one of the pastures I rode out to, there was this oak tree that I had my eye on. And it was this big oak tree that had a long, broad branch, about this big around, that went out about 10 or 15 feet just straight out from this thing, and then it went up. And I thought to myself, this is just the perfect one that I'm looking for. I rode Mo, my horse, under it to just check it out, and I found that branch came right here, just like it ought to. Because you see, I was a fan of the movie, the TV show Zorro. Anybody remember that? He makes the sign of the Z. Right, Zorro. And one of the things that Zorro, one of his best tricks was that federales would be chasing him. He'd be riding across through the woods, and he'd reach up and grab a hold of a branch and swing up into the tree, and his horse would ride on with the federales chasing in hot pursuit, and he always got away that way. And so I figured, this would be a good thing to know how to do. It might come in handy someday. So this is my chance. I had my horse Mo with me, and I rode him back about, maybe 100, 150 feet away from the branch, probably about as far as from here to that wall back there. And I just took him off at a full gallop. Now, I tied the reins together in advance so I could let go of him, because I was going to put my arms up in the air, grab that branch, and swing up into the tree. Of course, it didn't quite work out like that. Heroic vision I had was that I could see all these happening on the TV show. So with my arms straight up in the air, I just hit that branch square on my chest, and it knocked me right off the back of Mo. And I knocked the wind out of me. I was on the ground, disoriented. I finally, when I kind of got to my senses, I looked, and all the skin had been scraped off my underside of my arms, and all across my chest, and even my chin, the underside of my chin was all, yes. Well, anyway, my experience is not at all like that of Zorro's, and I sort of limped back to Mo. He was just over there eating grass as if nothing had happened. He didn't care. And I sort of sheepishly rode home from that. So, what are the lessons from these reflections, you may wonder? They kind of provide a cautionary tale of play gone terribly wrong, right? However, these experiences become cherished memories of childhood and of our family and playing together, and where risks were taken and lessons were learned, and a celebration of life and stories that make us laugh. And as we become adults, they serve as a reminder of what play that can make you resilient if you can survive it. So, thank you.
Please stand as you're able, willing, and we're going to be singing hymn number 1008, When Our Heart Is in a Holy Place. And this is the second verse. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, we can see our faces in each other's eyes. Then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, they are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place.
Today, I want to talk about something that's not often discussed in theology: play. Not recreation, not entertainment, not simply something children do while adults are busy with real life. I want to talk about play as a spiritual practice, play as a way of encountering the sacred, play as something that forms our souls just as surely as prayer, service, or meditation. And I have to admit, this topic feels deeply personal, because I have always had a playful side, and some people might describe me as silly. Some might say I never quite grew up. And some might wonder why I still get excited about things that are often considered childish or insignificant. I am what people lovingly and sometimes teasingly call a Disney adult. Yes, I am one of those people. The kind of person who hears the opening notes of a Disney song and immediately knows the movie. The kind that's this person who thinks mouse ears are more appropriate attire for more occasions than society currently allows. And I'm the kind of person who believes there is absolutely nothing wrong with standing in line for an hour to hug a fictional character. And I know there are people who hear the phrase Disney adult and immediately think, oh no. But I have come to believe that there is something beautiful about allowing yourself something wholeheartedly. There's something courageous about refusing to become cynical. There is something sacred about protecting your capacity for joy. And apparently, though, my capacity for wonder extends beyond animated creatures. Because when I was 23 years old, which is not far off from now, I met Chewbacca. Yes, Chewbacca. A 7-foot-tall Wookiee from Star Wars. And I cried. Actually cried. Like, not a little emotional moment, full-on cried at 23 years old. And I was a fully grown adult standing in front of someone wearing an incredibly convincing Wookiee costume, with tears streaming down my face. Now, I know what some people hear when I tell that story. They may hear an adult cried over a fictional character. And maybe that sounds ridiculous. Maybe it is ridiculous. But I've realized something. What fascinated me afterwards wasn't that I cried. It was how quickly people assumed I should be embarrassed. Nobody would have questioned tears at a wedding. Nobody would have questioned tears after graduating. Nobody would have questioned tears after receiving an award or getting a promotion. Those are respectable emotions. But tears because you experienced wonder. Because you connected with a story that shaped your childhood. Because for one brief moment, the world felt magical again. Suddenly, people start asking, aren't you a little old for that? And that question has stayed with me. Not because I felt embarrassed, but because I began wondering, when did we learn that joy had an expiration date? Who decided that adulthood means replacing wonder with practicality? Who taught us that imagination belongs to children when productivity belongs to adults? Because children are never ashamed of their delight. A child meeting Chewbacca doesn't apologize. A child doesn't stop to think, will this make people think I'm immature? A child just simply experiences joy. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, something changes. We begin believing that growing up means becoming more serious. That responsible people don't get overly excited. That mature people don't play. That successful people don't waste time. And maybe that's one of the greatest losses of adulthood. Not that we grow older, but that we simply become suspicious of joy. And before I go any further, I want to acknowledge something that happened here last week. Last week's service was in many ways an experiment in holy play. Rather than following our usual structure, we created worship together through improvisation. We stepped into uncertainty. We listened. We responded. We trusted one another. And we created something that had never existed before. There were no guarantees, no script telling us exactly what would happen, and no certainty that everything would work perfectly. Which, if you think about it, sounds an awful like children creating together. Children don't wait until they have a perfect plan before they begin. They just begin. And they discover, they build, they knock it down, they laugh, they start over. Adults often call that inefficient. Children call it Tuesday. Last week, we gave ourselves permission to do something adults rarely allow themselves to do. We looked a little foolish. We let go of perfection. We made room for surprise. We created creativity more than control. And what emerged wasn't chaos. It was community. That is the power of play. Improvisation, after all, isn't the absence of discipline. It's the presence of trust. Trust that you do not need every answer before you begin. Trust that you can respond instead of control. Trust that something meaningful can emerge when people listen deeply to one another. And trust that feels deeply spiritual to me. And perhaps it feels especially Unitarian Universalist, because ours is a tradition that does not claim one person possesses all the truth. We gather with different stories, different questions, different experiences, different wisdom. Then together we create something richer than any of us could have created alone. That is exactly what improvisation does. And perhaps that is exactly what this faith does. Science, interestingly enough, has begun confirming what spiritual traditions have understood for centuries. Play is not luxury. It is not reward for finishing our work. It is not something we graduate beyond. Play is essential to being human. Psychiatrist Stuart Brown, who founded the National Institute for Play, has spent decades studying what happens when play disappears from our lives. His conclusion is remarkably simple. Play helps us become more fully human. It strengthens creativity. It develops resilience. It improves our emotional regulation. It deepens our relationships. It increases our capacity to solve problems, and it even helps our brains recover from chronic stress. In other words, play isn't the opposite of work. Play is one of the things that makes good work and good lives possible. Yet, isn't it strange how adults teaches exactly the opposite? We speak about play as though it may always be ended. I'm sure we all have told ourselves, I'll relax when everything is finished, or I'll enjoy myself after I catch up, or I'll take time for fun once I become less busy. But have you noticed? Everything is never finished. The inbox refills, the laundry returns, the dishes multiply, the calendar somehow becomes even fuller, and there is always one more email, one more errand, one more responsibility, and so we postpone joy. Sometimes for years. I wonder if part of the problem is that somewhere along the way we begin measuring ourselves by what we produce. Children don't do that. Have you ever watched a child build a blanket fort? They don't stop halfway through and ask, will this increase my efficiency? Will this improve my resume? Or will this advance my 5-year plan? No, they simply create. Because creating is enough. They don't draw pictures because someone might buy them. They don't sing because they think they'll become famous. They don't dance because they're trying to burn calories. They dance because music just happened. And somewhere along the way, we lose that. We begin introducing ourselves by our jobs. We ask strangers, what do you do? Not what brings you joy. Not what makes you come alive. Not what fills you with wonder. What do you do? Our identity slowly becomes wrapped in our usefulness. Our value becomes tangled with our productivity. We begin believing that every moment must accomplish something. Reading becomes acceptable if it's educational. Exercise becomes acceptable if it improves performance. Hobbies become acceptable if they become side businesses. Even rest has to become productive. We optimize our sleep. We maximize our vacations. We monetize our creativity. Somehow, we have become uncomfortable simply enjoying something because it's beautiful. Joy has to justify itself. Wonder has to defend itself. Play has to have earned permission to exist. And maybe that is why meeting Chewbacca moved me so deeply. Because for those few moments, I wasn't accomplishing anything. I wasn't improving myself. I wasn't networking. I wasn't checking off a goal. I wasn't becoming more productive. I was simply experiencing joy. And perhaps that is precisely why it felt holy. Not because Chewbacca is sacred, but because wonder is. Because being fully present is. Because remembering that life is meant to be something experienced but not merely managed is. The more I think about it, the more I wonder if this obsession with productivity has quietly become one of the defining spiritual struggles of our age. We rarely ask whether we are becoming wiser. We ask whether we are becoming more efficient. We rarely ask whether our souls are healthy. We ask whether our schedules are full. We rarely ask whether we are deeply alive. We ask whether we are getting enough done. And our culture has become remarkably good at helping us produce. It is far less interested in helping us flourish. And that is where faith has something important to say. Because every week, whether we realize it or not, we gather here to practice a different story. We live in a culture that says your value comes from what you accomplish. Our faith says your worth is inherent. Our culture says, what have you produced? And our faith says, who are you becoming? Our culture tells us to earn our place, but our faith reminds us that every single person already possesses inherent worth and dignity. Not because of what they do, not because of what they contribute, not because of how successful they become, simply because they exist. That is a radically different way of seeing the world. And if that is true, then perhaps play is not a distraction from our spiritual lives. Perhaps it is one of the ways we remember who we have been all along. So perhaps play is not a distraction, but a way that it can remind us of something our faith teaches us again and again. We are not human beings who occasionally have moments of wonder. We are human beings made for wonder. One of the most important parts of play is imagination. And imagination is something adults often underestimate. We tend to think imagination is something children use because they do not yet understand the real world. Children imagine dragons, they imagine kingdoms, they imagine that a cardboard box can become a spaceship. And adults, meanwhile, pride ourselves on being realistic. We learn to focus on what is practical, what is measurable, what is possible, and that there's wisdom in predictability. We need responsibility, we need knowledge, we need the ability to navigate the world as it is. But what happens when practicality becomes the only lens through which we see? What happens when we become so focused on what is that we lose our ability to imagine what could be? Because every human achievement began as something someone imagined before it existed. Every work of art, every scientific discovery, every movement for justice, every act of compassion, every moment of transformation, someone had to look at the world as it was and imagine the world as it could become. That is what imagination does. It opens a door between reality and possibility, and that is deeply connected to faith. Faith begins with the question, what if? What if there was more love than we currently see? What if people are capable of change? What if our communities can become more compassionate? What if justice is possible? What if the world we inherited is not the world we have to leave behind? Every one of those questions requires imagination. You cannot move toward a more just world if you cannot imagine justice. You cannot build beloved community if you cannot imagine relationships rooted in greater compassion. You cannot search for truth and meaning if you cannot imagine that there is still more truth and meaning waiting to be discovered. Imagination is not childish. Imagination is one of the most powerful spiritual practices we can have. And perhaps that is why play is so connected to spiritual growth. We often imagine spiritual maturity as moving from uncertainty towards certainty, as though becoming a person of faith means eventually having all the answers. But I wonder if the opposite is actually true. Perhaps spiritual maturity is not becoming someone who has fewer questions. Perhaps spiritual maturity is becoming someone who can live more gracefully with mystery. Play teaches us how to do that. When we play, we experiment. We try something, we fail, we laugh, we adjust, and we try again. We learn that mistakes are not the end of the story. They are part of the story. And doesn't that sound a lot like spiritual play? Faith is not about building a perfect life. It is about remaining open. It is about continuing to grow, continuing to learn, continuing to be transformed. Faith is less like constructing a flawless building and more like building with blocks. We create something, it falls apart, we rebuild, we try a different approach. Maybe we make it taller, maybe we make it stranger, maybe we add a dragon. And honestly, the version with the dragon is usually more interesting. And this is why I think last week's improvisational service mattered so much to me. We didn't simply try something different. We practiced a spiritual discipline. We practiced openness. We practiced trust. We practiced creativity. And we practiced letting go of the idea that something meaningful only happens when everything is perfectly planned. And that is a lesson many adults desperately need. Because we live in a world that tells us uncertainty is something to eliminate. We want the 5-year plan, the retirement plan, the backup plan, the plan for when the plan doesn't work, and we want guarantees. We want control, but life rarely offers guarantees. Faith asks us to step forward anyways, and play teaches us how. When children play, they do not need to know how exactly the story is going to end. They enter the story. They participate, they create, they discover, and maybe that is what we are called to do in our spiritual lives. Not to wait until everything makes sense before we begin living, but to enter the mystery, to participate in confusion, to be part of the creation, and to trust that everything sacred can emerge when we show up with our open hearts. I keep returning to that moment with Chewbacca, because the older I get, the more I realize that moment was never really about Star Wars. It wasn't really about a costume. It wasn't really about a character. It was about connection. It was about memory. It was about stories that had shaped me. It was about a little piece of my childhood that somehow survived into adulthood. And maybe that's part of the gift of play. Play reconnects us with the parts of ourselves we thought we had outgrown. That curious part, that creative part, the part that notices our beauty, the part that gets excited, the part that believes something ordinary can become extraordinary, the part that still looks at the world and wonders. There is a difference between being childish and being childlike. Childishness can mean refusing to grow. It can mean avoiding responsibility. It can mean being unwilling to learn. But childlikeness is something entirely different. Childlikeness is openness, curiosity, wonder, trust, the willingness to ask questions, and the willingness to imagine possibilities. This willingness to see something familiar and still discover something new. So perhaps the question before us is not simply, do we play enough? Perhaps the deeper question is, what have we lost by refusing to play? Where have we become too serious? Where have we decided that wonder is no longer appropriate? And where have we convinced ourselves that joy must be earned? Where have we traded our curiosity for certainty? And where have we exchanged imagination for our efficiency? Because this world does not need adults who have forgotten how to wonder. The world needs people who can imagine, people who can create, people who can laugh, people who can look at what exists and say, maybe there's another way. People who have seen suffering and still believe healing is possible. People who can see division and still imagine connection. People who can see injustice and still imagine liberation. People who can see a broken world and still believe something beautiful can be built. This is not childish. This is spiritual. So this week, I invite you all to play. Not because you have finished everything, not because all your responsibilities have disappeared, not because you have finally earned permission. Play because you are human. Make something that does not need to be useful. Draw something badly. Write something silly, sing loudly, dance like everyone is watching. And spend time doing something simply because it brings you joy. Allow yourself to wonder, allow yourself to imagine, and allow yourself to experience delight without apologizing for it. And if a small voice inside you says, that is ridiculous, perhaps listen closely. Maybe that voice is not wisdom. Maybe it is simply part of adulthood that learned to be afraid of joy. Because perhaps the people who still get emotional meeting Chewbacca are not the ones who have failed to grow up. Perhaps they are the ones who have refused to let adulthood steal their sense of wonder. Perhaps they're the ones who remember that joy does not have an expiration date. Perhaps they are the ones who remember that this life is not only about managing responsibilities, checking boxes, and getting things done. It's also about being moved. It is about delight. It's about connection. It is about allowing ourselves to stand in awe of something larger than ourselves, even if occasionally that something happens to be a 7-foot-tall Wookiee. I think about that 23-year-old version of myself standing in front of Chewbacca, a little embarrassed, a little overwhelmed, completely filled with joy. And now, years later, I don't think that person needed to grow up. I think that person remembered something important, something adulthood had tried to convince me to forget. That joy is not a weakness. That wonder is not immaturity. That imagination is not escape from reality. Sometimes, imagination gives us the courage to change our reality. Sometimes laughter is sacred. Sometimes silliness is holy. And sometimes that path towards deeper faith is not found by becoming more serious. Sometimes it's found by learning to play again. May we protect our joy. May we nurture our imagination. May we trust our curiosity, and may we continue searching for truth and meaning with our open hearts. May we remember that every person has inherent worth and dignity, not because of what they produce, but because they are. And may we never become so busy proving that we are adults that we forget how to be alive. Thank you.
Please join me in saying the extinguishing chalice words in your order of service. As we extinguish the flame, may we carry its light into our lives with playful hearts, open spirits, and joyful courage. May we remember that moments of wonder, laughter, and imagination can be acts of faith and hope. Until we gather again, let us go in peace and play.
Go in joy, go in peace, go play and laugh and carry your lightness into the world.
Wow, if you're really interested, it's in the great hymnal, but you all know it anyway. It's This Little Light of Mine. And God, can you stand still whenever you sing that? I think we ought to clap too. Can we clap? Yeah, okay.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, oh Lordy. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine all together now. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, oh, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Woo, let's play.
As this live stream from First Unitarian Church comes to an end, remember that previous live streams can be found on our YouTube channel. We'd love to see you in person someday. Until then, thanks for joining us.